Tatiana.
Hello.
How are you doing, mate?
I'm really well, thank you. Really well. Better for being here. Feel good.
Well, we just said there we haven't seen each other since November last year.
Yeah, but it seems so long ago. But I suppose it's not too long.
No, but 6 months, isn't it? 6 months ago. And I remember vividly me having to rush back from that event that we were at because our little boy was born like weeks before. He was like maybe 4 or 5 weeks old then. And I remember getting a taxi back that night because I just obviously wanted to be in my own bed and be back with Eleanor. But yeah, 6 months.
Wow.
What have you been doing in the last 6 months?
What have I been doing? I've been doing more interviews for my podcast. So I've got a podcast about sex and relationships, as you know, as you've been on. And so I've been doing some more filming days of that, getting more scope for that. I have just become a radio presenter.
What?
Which has been so fun.
Since when?
Yeah, so I decided to do, I've always obviously loved presenting and have been a presenter, but I thought I'd branch out into radio and absolutely love it. So I'm a radio presenter for Hoxton Radio.
Oh, wicked.
Yeah.
Is that where you're going today?
Yeah.
Ah, okay, cool.
Yeah. Which is really good. So I'm at the end, I'm just coming up to the end of my course and I'm hoping they'll keep me on. So yeah, it's been great. And that is a completely different avenue. And I suppose it's the time where I'm not talking about sex and I'm always talking about sex. So now I've got to really try and tame it in.
Yeah, your reflex is to talk about sex all the time because that is all you do in your pod.
Yeah. I was doing my link in when you go, it's Tatiana Ashbourne and you're listening to Hoxton Radio. And I went into my Dirty Talk one being like, welcome to Under the Sheet. I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I've just done that.
Did you say that live?
Yeah.
Oh no. Well,
know,
we'll talk about that. So let's give some context to people who don't know who you are. We met last year, and I love what you're doing with your pod. And I think that your journey into doing the podcast, to doing Dirty Talk, which we were on last year and we loved it, is a really interesting one. So yeah, to give some context, let's go back a little bit and just go through your journey into, I think it was around 17 when this trajectory kind of changed for you, and then to doing what you do now. So maybe a bit of a snapshot about that whole journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose, it started younger than 17 because I was really scared to have sex. Okay. And the whole idea of it completely freaked me out, knowing I thought I knew so much about it. I have 2 older brothers and they would tell me as much as I wanted to know, or and you hear it in the school playground, and I thought I was the one that was always talking to my friends about it, being like, oh, this is what happens, this is what's going to happen, when I was 13, 14. And then it actually gets to the stage where I hadn't thought about doing it myself, and then it obviously gets to the stage where you start looking at people differently and think, oh, I'm quite attracted to them, and what could potentially happen. And that's when I was just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I've actually got to go on this journey, and I think I'll be fine, but I am terrified. It was like I had a list of worries on my phone. I was quite a nervous teenager, that I'd always write down what I was most panicking about, and it was always sex was always at the top of the list, and it was just crazy to me because I was struggling at school, but the fact that wasn't, what I was actually doing in that present time, that wasn't on the list. It was just the fact that I was so scared to have sex. And so then I was in drama school, and they gave me a project to write a play about anything you want to write about. And so I decided, after writing something completely different, it didn't work out. I got brain fog for the first time, writer's block. And I then went with this idea, talking about sex. My friends told me that I talk about sex a lot. Why don't you write it down? And it basically grew into this play called Dirty Talk. And it was all about first time sex, and I interviewed people about it, and then it won the competition to be performed in London, and so kind of just went on from there. Unfortunately, COVID came about, which meant I couldn't perform it. It became a radio play instead, and then from that we were in lockdown. And I was like, okay, I'm leaving drama school. I want to have something to my name to know that I'm doing okay. And so I spoke to my dad, because my dad's a very prominent figure in my life. And he said, well, why don't you turn it into an interview space and just interview people like you did for your play, but just on camera. And so it kind of went from there. And I was lucky that it blew up within the first, I think, 3 months. And yeah, it's a long journey, but it's getting there. It's great. It's good fun.
Yeah, it's amazing. We came on last year, and first of all, I'll just say, I haven't had a chance to say this publicly, but the hospitality was next to none. We walk in, we've got a green room, we've got croissants. Eleanor was like, do you know when you used to DJ? I was like, yeah. She went, this is better than any green room you've ever got when you were touring. God. No, the hospitality was amazing. Obviously, you've got the studio and you've got the whole setup, and it was incredible. We were well looked after, so we thank you for that.
Oh no,
but
thank you.
Also just the experience of the set. You know, you're in a bed. You've made so much effort to make it very unique, right, and novel. But also the conversations you're having on there, real conversations.
Yeah,
you're not trying
absolutely.
to do cookie cutter interview style. You're actually going quite far on like trying to push the conversation about sex. And I'm wondering like why you felt the need to kind of be pushing. You are kind of pushing boundaries a little bit, because the topics you're talking about, I mean, sex in general can be seen as a bit of a taboo thing.
Yeah.
And you're like going in on asking people quite intimate questions. You did with us.
Yeah, I think it's a scary subject, and it's always been at the forefront of my mind that I wanted a platform for myself that I could go to and learn things about sex and relationships, and that I didn't although I'm very open with my parents and they tell me a lot of things and I know that I can ask questions, you don't feel that comfortable. You could, but you're like, but they are my parents.
Yeah.
That's my family, and I don't want to. And the friends, you're not going to ask your teacher, and your friends aren't as experienced because you're all still quite young. So it was definitely something. I found a website called Come Curious, which is 2 girls doing a YouTube show. And it was watching that, I've looked up how to give a blowjob, and things like that, which I couldn't do elsewhere.
Yeah, of course.
Because I was way too scared to go on porn. I wouldn't do that. Whereas for just watching 2 girls in their bedroom talk about it, and I was like, oh my goodness, that really helped me when I was like 15. So then I thought, well, why not get to interview other people? And I think it's important that I'm not just interviewing people that are either famous or know a lot about sex. It's very much like I'm asking my friends and family. I've asked my 80-year-old grandma, all about these things. And everyone's life experience is so different. Everyone has sex in such a different way. Sex means something different to everyone. And I think it's important, like going on the fact what you've said about my hospitality. Well, thank you very much, firstly. But also I think that's so important when I'm talking about sex and relationships. It's obviously an extremely intimate subject. So I want someone to come to the studio and feel comfortable from the get-go, knowing they've got everything at their fingertip. If they need some time before, they come on and discuss what's been going on in their life. Yeah. And if they want food, if they need a time to relax, because I would say my biggest scare everywhere is, oh my goodness, the toilet. I'm thinking, what if I need to go to the toilet? That's all I think about when I go somewhere. So it's knowing that I have, just a bathroom for someone to go to, and I think that's, important, and which is why I like that they have an experience as soon as they enter the studio, that we go on a journey together. And a lot of the time I'm meeting them for the first time. So it's important that, I have time with them to get to know them and for them to feel comfortable in my space that I'm giving them.
Yeah, no, completely.
And also getting on a bed. I mean,
yeah, I know.
More intimate than that, right?
Yeah. You sat in this bed in the covers. There was 3 of us. You were in the middle. Me and Eleanor were either side. But that almost felt... Eleanor turned to me before you got on the bed. Yeah. She just said, this has actually made me feel really relaxed. Yeah. We were in our pajamas. Well, Eleanor was in her pajamas.
Yeah.
She was pregnant at the time. And I think one of the first things you said was, if you need to go to the loo, like, make sure you just stay. Because obviously she was heavily pregnant at the time.
Yeah.
But the way you've set it up does make people feel, well, from my anecdotal experience, made us feel very calm and almost like you're at home. You're in a bed and you've got the duvet over you. It works for sure. But so I just wanted to give some context to people before we dived into the questions I've got. But Just to preface the rest of the conversation, am I right in saying you are a sex educator?
Yes.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about that then? So is it a course? Is it like how does that work?
Yeah, so I did a course. I was doing the podcast for a few years and kind of thought, I am talking about this so much. I can't give advice, and I still can't give advice technically, like a legal advice, for anything. But at least I thought, I'm talking to people and it's a sensitive matter, and I'd really like to be more educated, knowing that I have something to my name that I felt like I had imposter syndrome. I'm there talking about sex, and at the beginning I hadn't had sex or hadn't had many sexual experiences. So I was very much asking the questions I was needing to know. However, the more I was doing it, the more I was like, I now know a lot more. I've had sex more. So I know a level that I can talk to people about it, but I still feel a bit out of it. So I decided to become a sex educator. Amazing. So I did a course, and it was amazing. I did the course online. I was actually living in New Zealand at the time, and it was over in the UK that I was doing it from 1 a.m. till 5 a.m. every morning, and then going to work from 6 a.m. in New Zealand because I was trying to get on the right schedule. Yeah. So it was a bit of a mental period of my life. But I absolutely loved the course. It's with ASET training, if anyone wants to do it. And it was really good. So now I'm a sex educator, so I can actually go and teach it in schools or universities, or just talk openly. Like, I can go to events to talk about it. And it was basically just months of doing sex education lessons, as you would at school, but it's just teaching you a mature way to talk about it. Although I definitely felt the less mature in my class, because I was there, cracking up when they said the word penis. Just everything.
See, I'm 37 and I still sometimes crack up at silly words.
Yeah. And I think it's important because sex education is so, for me at school, I didn't feel, until I went to my second school, that's where I felt more comfortable with the sex education. But in my first school, it was very much, you're not allowed to laugh. There's only a certain amount you're allowed to learn. And I didn't like that, and I didn't feel like I could go to my teachers. So I felt like with me doing it, if I ever were to go to schools, which I'd absolutely love to do, I feel like at least I know, I'm hoping that someone can look at me and feel like they can talk to me about it
completely, and
have a laugh about it, and know that, yes, it's awkward, but we've all been, we all go through it.
We all do it as well. It's exactly. Like part of life.
Yeah.
Me and Eleanor have had this a little bit with what we're doing, because we're not fertility experts. Mm-hmm. We've never done any courses. We've never kind of got any education in this side of things. All we can talk about is our anecdotal experience or our journey. Mm-hmm. So it's really good for us to speak to people like yourself, or it doesn't, again, just to put this into the conversation as well, you're not trying for kids. Yeah. You're not a fertility expert, anything like that. But when it comes to sex, I think sex is it's a huge part of this.
Yeah.
And because this is your area, and we've known each other for a little while now, and we've been on your podcast, I thought it would be really good to bring this conversation over to No Straight Line, so we can have a talk about how sex is affecting relationships, especially with trying to conceive. IVF's a completely different thing, because you're not actually trying to have sex, but the whole run up to then having to go down an IVF route, if it happens that way, it's tough.
Yeah.
So we can get straight into it. So the first thing I wanted to discuss was the pressure around trying to conceive. Mm-hmm. So myself and Eleanor didn't really feel this at the start of our journey. So in 2020, March 2020, we started trying for children, and we were living with Eleanor's mum at the time. So that was already a bit of a fucking blocker, right? So we're living in her spare room. We actually moved from Manchester back up to there to live there for 3 or 4 months so we could get the money for a deposit for a house so we could move out. Then lockdown happened, and I think we spoke about this, but just for people who don't know, we ended up staying there for maybe a year. Mm-hmm. But in March, April, we're like, I can't go back on tour. I can't go on the road because I was DJing at the time. Let's just try for children. So we started, Eleanor came off the pill, and we thought it's going to take some time. And at the start, we didn't really feel the pressure. I felt maybe I was very unhealthy at the time, so I knew I had some lifestyle changes to make, and Eleanor coming off contraception was a whole other thing. It might take 6 months, it might take 12 months. But when it got to 11, 12 month mark, when we hadn't got one pregnancy test, a positive pregnancy test, the pressure started to build, and it really became the intimacy is gone at that point, right? So if we fast forward a little further, when we're in like year 3, year 4, we are looking at ovulation sticks. We're looking at all the tracking apps. We're losing ourselves, and we lost ourselves completely in an intimate way. And I wanted to kind of talk to you about that. Like, I mean, you've obviously had a lot of conversations with people on your podcast about sex. I don't know about trying to conceive or fertility, but pressure in sex is really tough, and I'm wondering if there's, this is more trying to create a value for people listening who are trying to conceive. Is there any things that people can do to kind of work through those really tough moments where sex is actually, you've got to have sex this time on this day in this time span? Like, what can people actually do to try and relax in those moments? Because we really struggled with that.
I think, I mean, there's so much pressure around it because sex, to be honest, is like the fundamentals of a relationship, right? That's like what kind of a relationship is being intimate with someone. It makes it from a friendship to a relationship.
Absolutely.
Is the sex part, whatever sex means to you. So I think that is a big problem, and you also, there's a massive pressure in the fact that you might have completely 2 different sex drives, and your libido can be so different, and you've got to try and balance that as well as the pressure of then trying to conceive. It's all over the place, and you've got to, you get those apps that tell you.
Oh, we had all of them, Tatiana. We had like millions of them.
Yeah, and that's not sexy, is it? Really?
No.
Right now, let's go.
And it's so. Eleanor won't mind me saying, Eleanor, when we first started trying, Eleanor's sex drive was way higher than mine. My lifestyle was so unhealthy that everything I was, drinking and partying, late nights, like heavily drinking and not eating the right foods, that all contributed. But when we started, Eleanor's libido was way higher than mine. So that was difficult at the start. But as we got further into it, both of our libidos were just fucked.
Done. Yeah.
And it was just trying to balance that. And I know so many people out there who, if anyone does listen to this and is going through that, they'll feel that as well. And I'm just trying to create a conversation around it. I'm not even asking you for solutions. I'm just trying to openly talk about this because we don't talk about it.
Yeah, but also, I mean, you've mentioned before that I think the best thing you did obviously this was an IVF journey, but this could be the same with your with just your sex journey and trying to conceive, is taking a break.
Yes. Oh my God.
You went away traveling.
Yeah, for basically a year. Yeah.
That was honestly the best thing you could have done.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much you need to do it now. You've got a time frame, or like the woman is getting to an age where she won't potentially be able to have any children anymore, and it's all in a rush, and I think it's so important that you take a moment and you think, okay, hang on a second, there's, what was it like before we were trying to have a baby, and thinking that, because the problem is that the love goes, because you're too busy hyper focused on something that's just a pipe dream at the time, that you then lose what you were like before that.
Oh, it goes completely.
Yeah, and I think also the pressure of like, as soon as the app's telling you go and have sex, you then that's so stressful that you think, I mean, I get it just having sex, that I close up because sometimes I panic that it's going to hurt or something like that. So if you're doing it constantly, as you would be when you're trying to have a baby, you then will panic more. And I think it's important that you go back to the beginning, the basics of intimacy, and you flirt and you date and you slowly touch each other, rather than the pressure of, you don't need to have sex right then and there, take some time, take a break, do things that are going to keep you in the mood, date again from the beginning rather than just rushing it all, because I'm sure most dates do end up in sex, but you've just got to go on the date first, right? And you you lose that when you're trying to have a baby.
Oh, completely. We didn't even think that's a great point. I wish we'd heard this 3 years ago, but you're completely right. We weren't even thinking about like even the foreplay stuff. I was in my head, right? I knew that we needed to have sex every 2 days.
Yeah.
So they say, You don't need to have, try not to focus too much on ovulation sticks. Do them if you want for peace of mind. That's a load of bullshit because it's not peace of mind. It's just extra pressure. Eleanor will go pee in a stick and she'll get up in the morning. I knew she'd go straight downstairs and do a stick.
Yeah.
And I'd know if she'd ovulated because she'd start to like come on to me. But I knew, right? So my subconscious is going, shit, she's got a positive ovulation test. I need to now get it up.
Yeah, and it's the anxiety of performance.
Completely.
That's very difficult.
And I'll openly talk about this. I think it needs to be spoke about, but there's many times, and I had to work on this, where I just couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. We get into the like kissing and stuff, and then I was like, it's not happening. Or she'd know, like she could tell it's not happening. It's obvious. But that was really difficult to deal with because then I feel emasculated. And then I know that, right, she said, okay, that's fine. We'll leave today, but we'll try tomorrow. So the pressure's doubled then.
Yeah.
So then the next night, so that night I'm going to bed. I know the next day we have to do it. Otherwise this whole month's ruined.
Yeah.
And it's a whole another 28 days we've got to wait. And then if I don't perform that day, then the whole month is now wasted. And now we have to wait till next ovulation period. And this doubled and tripled, and every single month the pressure builds.
And that stress is it makes it more likely for you not to be able to conceive.
Exactly.
Because you're just thinking about it. But it's also important to say, I think it's 20 to 25% of any healthy couple being actually able to conceive. That's a very small amount, as in conceiving on the time you have. Have
right,
sex.
yes, I know that, yeah.
Rather than where was I going? As in,
like with the ovulation period, you mean, or with?
Yeah, just with any couple, it's actually 20 to 25% that you actually get pregnant.
Yeah, it's so low.
So it's so low, regardless of whether whatever your fertility is. It's very low, and I think that's always when I was at school. You were told, going back to like sex education lessons. I was scared to have sex because I thought I was going to get pregnant. But it's very difficult to actually get pregnant.
We were all told that.
Still wear a condom. I'm not telling anyone, don't stress about it. Like, do be worried. But, is that I think it's put into our minds from a young age that pregnancy is fine. And you'll get pregnant if you want to.
It's not.
And it's not taught in schools that you could have a problem, and that you might not be able to have a baby, and you should have solutions if you can't have a baby, and I think that should be emphasized massively.
A lot of this stuff you're not in control of. Like you're not in control of getting the ovulation right. You're not in control of if you've got infertility problems, like male or female, right? If you've got PCOS, endometriosis, I had DNA fragmentation, low morphology, these things, yes, you're in control of, but nothing you can do now.
Yeah.
I feel like it's that instant gratification thing where what can I control now? I can go for a walk. I can not eat that. I could not drink that. All these things you can control. And I definitely think the lifestyle thing is huge. I've been banging about that loads on my socials recently, which is, if I look at myself 6 years ago, compared to now, I don't recognize that person. So when we started trying for children, when I was trying to be sexy and I was trying to be intimate, I didn't feel like that. Do you know what I mean? So Eleanor, she's always been smoking hot, right? And I wasn't. Eleanor called me, what did she call me in a message earlier today? She's, when stuff pops up on your Facebook and it says 7 years ago. She sent one before and it was me 5 years ago. So it was just when we were starting, and I went, oh my God. She went, wow. And I went, don't recognize him. She put a little emoji of a dim sum and she went, my dumpling. Because I was like a proper dumpling. I was pasty. So I was unhealthy. And all that stress on my body, physically, was eating into my libido and my sex life then. Absolutely. And also then affecting our sex life as a couple. But I think the pressure, this is one thing I want to talk about and have a conversation with you, because, you're in this, the sex space, I don't know what you call it that, but this conversation doesn't happen enough. And it's this infertility conversation in general is still kind of taboo, but when it comes to the pressure on sex, especially men, I was super embarrassed about this, Tatiana. Like, it really tore us apart at one point. Me and Eleanor were at heads, especially like when it would go 2 or 3 months where I couldn't do it on the right times.
Yeah.
Eleanor's like, we're never going to have a baby. Like, you can't do it. And that, like, she's right. Like, if I can't perform at the time I need to perform, we're not going to have a baby naturally, right? But if I can't even just do the job that I'm supposed to do, and she's like, look, you've got one job to do. All these things, she's right, but it's just adding more pressure.
And I think it's throughout our whole lives, regardless of talking about sex, just in anything, we're always first to blame someone else. You know, and
I'm not slating Eleanor, because she had to go. Absolutely. She had to go through so much, and she was doing all the right things, supplements, and she was, having all these investigations done, and we'd done so much at this point. And if you have to put it like on paper, I did have one job to do, and I was really struggling with that one job because of the stress. It's counterintuitive, because you want to be intimate, but you can't be if you're stressed. So you can't get a boner if you're stressed. So it's like you're in this like oxymoron, like contradictory state all the time. And it's horrendous.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I can't imagine, and I'm so sorry that you had to go through it, but also what a miracle that it's happened for you.
Oh man, I know. But we got there in the end.
It's also like, obviously Eleanor had a baby in her stomach, and then it's the pressure of holding on to it. And you're thinking, we are so lucky to have got this far. And you then are thinking the worst, because of the amount of times you went through the worst. Then when you've got something so special, then you have a complete other pressure to be like, we've got to get to the end of pregnancy. And a lot of people, I know a lot of people that are pregnant, and you've got the pressures. That's the problem. It's the pressures of baby announcements. Like even announcing you're getting married. Everything. All relationships are online. Social media is what. So you're constantly seeing all these things happen for so many other people, and no one really talks about the things about it not happening. And about that it's painful watching someone do a baby announcement, and the fact that it hasn't been able to happen for you, and then it's also, I know people that are very quick to telling everyone, oh, we're pregnant. They buy all the baby things, they do everything, but it's also like, but I would panic if I'll be so excited, but I'd be thinking, oh my goodness, I'm getting all this equipment, and I'm just so worried that I might not get to the end of it, and you just don't know, and you're obviously telling everyone because it's such an amazing news, but that's what kind of kills you, and also could kill your relationship, is just, it took you so long to get pregnant, and then it's just the next step, and it feels like you can't ever be happy until it's,
And even then, like, I won't go into the details, but the birth was another whole different, Eleanor had this birth plan, and we may as well have just threw it in the bin the day before, because nothing went to plan. I'll let Eleanor tell you. Have I told you this story?
No.
I'll let Eleanor tell you when because we'll chat again. But Eleanor will tell you it's crazy. She was in labour for 44 hours.
Oh my goodness.
And we started at home, and anyway, it was a whole thing. But actually, I wanted to touch on that because something came to mind when you were talking about baby announcements, baby showers, gender reveals, all those things you see on social media. The pressure built even more when, let's say, we were in that week, ovulation week, and we'd see someone announce that they were pregnant, and then we needed to have sex on that night or that week. That made it even harder because we just seen one of our close friends or family announce a pregnancy, and we're still not there, and now we've got to try to have sex even though we're sad. We're kind of because even if it's not some, you go through your For You page or your feed, even if it's not someone you see announcements and stuff, that affects you.
Absolutely.
And that adds more pressure because you just feel like you're getting left behind. And that knocks into your sex life. And really, we don't even describe it as a sex life. It wasn't really a sex life for 4.5 years.
Yeah, it's like a chore, isn't it?
It was. It was a chore. We knew when we needed to do it. One of the hardest things, I'll talk about this, we did super ovulation, which is, for people who don't know, it's like IVF. So Eleanor does all the hormones, all the injections to get more eggs. And then what happens is you do the trigger shot, which releases the eggs, and you have a certain amount of time to cover that period. So in IVF, they release the eggs, they go in and take the eggs, they take my sperm. I do the hard part, obviously, no pun intended. And then they put the egg and the sperm together to create the embryo and then put the embryo back. With super ovulation, what they do is everything the same with the woman, but then you have sex over that period.
Yeah.
So it still costs money, right? So you're paying thousands or whatever, right, to do this round of treatment, the protocol. And then you go in and they go, right, well, you've had your trigger injection this morning at 7:30. Right, okay. So 7:30 this morning, that means in 36 hours, you're going to be ovulating around that time, or you're ovulating soon, whatever, or the eggs are being released. You need to have sex tonight, tomorrow morning, and like, so you're given these times. So we go back, right, and we did this 4 times, and you've got this sheet, and it basically tells you when to have sex. You haven't got a choice. There's no choice. Like, Eleanor's doing all these hormones, and that's a whole other level of pressure.
Absolutely.
Because you're not just trying to conceive in the month and have sex. Now you've got a price tag on that if you don't do it.
Yeah.
The pressure is even more built up. So we did 4 rounds of that. The first round we got pregnant, and then we had more miscarriage with that. And then we did 3 more rounds. The 4th round, Eleanor ended up in hospital because she was basically on something called letrozole. It's like, I don't know, I'm not clinical, but I've got a clinical background, but it's essentially like, it's a hormone or a hormone blocker or something. And it basically smashed, or is it steroid? I don't know, but it smashed her immune system to a point where her immune system was rock bottom, and she got mouth thrush and her mouth was all swollen. She couldn't really breathe or drink water. She was on morphine in hospital. That's when we had the break. That's when we decided to go and do that break, which you mentioned before. But yeah, when you were talking about the announcements and stuff, that just reminded me, to come back full circle, of how much pressure it used to add to our sex life, because we just see everyone else getting ahead in life.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's anything you can really do to get over that, apart from Eleanor got rid of Instagram.
Yeah.
She just fucked it off. She just got rid of social media. She went, there's no way I can expose myself to that, because every day I'm seeing at least one thing. Even someone running around with a baby, or
it's like that thing when you haven't heard about something before, or you've spoken to your friend that you are potentially going to buy that fridge or something, and then it's constantly on your phone because they're listening. It's like, as soon as it's, I've heard of a new word, and now I see it everywhere, and I'm like, I've never known that word before until now, and now it's everywhere. It does happen. Like, when it's in your mind, like, that's all you're going to see.
What's it called? Is it called the pug theory? Isn't that what there's a name for it?
Yeah,
it's like, if you see a pug, and then all of a sudden you just see pugs everywhere.
Yeah, but it happens. It's crazy. But what my parents did before going to have a baby, because, I mean, to be honest, I'm not quite sure potentially the reason exactly why they did, but I suppose it was because they wanted a baby badly, but they also... Oh wait, I'm not explaining the story very well. So they basically let me start again. So they basically went to go and get a test done to check how fertile the both of they are, if they did have any problems, before getting married.
Okay.
I mean, you probably know more than me about the tests you can go and get, but I'm sure I know that's what my parents did before they got married, because they knew that they both wanted children. I mean, I don't think they would have broken up if it was, they would have found an alternative, But it is interesting. I think it's a good way to go and do that. Yeah,
and even forget about the relationship standpoint and maybe breaking apart. Because, I mean, I was telling you before, the guest we had on before, Jonathan, brilliant guy, his relationship broke down because of the fertility issues that he was having, and they went separate ways. I also know some couples who have decided to work through it, and they've either gone down sperm donor or egg donor or surrogacy. There's a lot of options now. You were mentioning there was your parents have actually been really intuitive about just going to the doctors and getting tested. Yeah. Not a lot of people will do that. We only went to do our tests because we weren't successful trying for 11 months, 12 months. But the preventative thing is something I think we need to talk about more. When we got our results from the NHS, from our GP, it was, I've mentioned it before, it was very basic tests, blood tests for Eleanor, semen analysis for me. But there was never at that point any suggested tests or preventative measures. Like I mentioned, diet, things like ultra processed foods, not drinking as much alcohol. We didn't smoke at the time, but all these things could be mentioned and they weren't. I think if you are going to, I think it's a really good point. Go and do the tests. At least then at that point, you'll know, for example, if that was me and I'd done my tests, 7-8 years ago, I knew I had high DNA fragmentation, low morphology. I could have learned about that then.
Yeah.
And then 2 or 3 years before we were trying for a family, I could have stopped going in the saunas.
Yeah.
I could have cut down the alcohol use, just try to get more sleep, stay away from certain foods, all these things. And these things take time to kick in.
And it would take the pressure away. It's getting rid of the clinical stuff because, getting rid of that early and getting it done because sex becomes clinical, because you're
completely.
Going to the doctors about it and you're constantly doing certain things that it's just like, oh God, I feel even dirty having sex, at that point because you're like, oh God, this is just not right, so it's about getting that out the way. So then when you are trying, you feel, where you are before you even start trying,
I think it's a great idea.
Mentally, you can take those steps before you get there.
It's actually mentally as well.
Yeah,
it is. It's psychologically, because when I found out that I had high DNA fragmentation, it was almost like I'd just been told that you're infertile. At that point, even the gentleman I was speaking to who was giving me the consultation said, even if you went through IVF now, you would struggle because of your results. So at that point, psychologically, even if we were trying naturally, I'd feel less, and that would make it even more hard to perform. And it's just like a vicious cycle. And that's the bit I found the most isolating, because I didn't want to go and talk to my mates about not being able to get it up, and I didn't want to be able to talk to my mates about not being able to perform. And you have friends who say their other half has to look at the missus and they get pregnant and all these things, and you're not experiencing anything close to that. It couldn't be further away. So I think, a lot of the conversation we've talked about today is about pressure around sex. I wanted to ask you, you obviously speak to so many people on this topic of sex.
Yeah.
What are the conversations that couples aren't having with each other? Because just to kind of give some context as to what I mean by this question, I didn't talk to Eleanor about any of my stuff for ages. So even though I was going through the pressure of trying to perform, Eleanor knew it, but I didn't want to speak to her about it. So we were in this weird situation where we knew we had a joint goal to have a child, and we had to perform and we had to have sex on certain times, but I didn't speak to her about it. I kept it all in. And I went to therapy, I tried CBT, I tried hypnosis, all these things, and I didn't tell Eleanor anything. What are the other conversations? Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, it's incredible that you went and seeked help? Is that
sought?
Yeah,
sought.
Is it sought? Yeah.
So right? Someone from the northeast shouldn't be speaking better than you. You speak the Queen's, you, Tatiana. Sought.
Oh, can you remember last time I said the word banter and that?
Oh my God, I love that.
The fact that you sought help though, and a lot of especially men, they don't want to do that, and I think that's very important that you I mean, I think it's important everyone goes to a therapist regardless if you think you need one or not, just to have a general chat with, because loads comes out of it. Go on, but you were going to ask me a question.
So the conversations that have you found from doing your podcast and speaking to so many people, like you said, you spoke to people who are young, you spoke to people right up to your grandma's age, 8-year-old. What are the conversations that people aren't having when it comes to sex?
I think it's interesting. So I had a couple on the bed the other day. And
I love that. I had a couple on the bed.
I sometimes say it with people that don't know the context of the podcast.
Yeah, that's why it sounds mad if you don't have a clue what you're talking about. But go on.
And they were saying how, I mean, they're getting married next year. They aren't thinking about children yet. They know they want them in the future, but it's not even a conversation. But it was the fact they were saying about the times they have sex, and they were saying, so we have sex on like Wednesday and then probably Friday the next week, and then and it was all in their time schedule because they were so busy with work. But we had that conversation, and then it's gone online, it's gone on TikTok, and the amount of people are commenting being like, what do you mean scheduling sex? What are you doing? And a lot of people are making them think that it's such a problem when actually so your life gets hectic,
of course,
you know, and in the end you do end up scheduling it, you know, and they didn't even think that scheduling sex, I mean, for them it was just totally normal, you know. And I think it's important that obviously we then spoke about sometimes, you know, you feel you then have a level that you need to perform, you know, and it's about having, I think people don't have those conversations when getting into a relationship of how they potentially see their sex life, because I feel like especially, I mean, talking to my grandma or thinking about many people over the age of 50 in relationships, let's say, you know, a lot, you are taught from a young age that, oh, by that point you won't be having sex, you know. And I think that's sad. I mean, because then you think, oh God, is that really the way? Or a lot of people fight against it and go like, no, that's not going to happen. But it really, like, your life gets busy. You know, this couple are in their late 20s, you know, and it's quiet for them just because your life gets so busy. But I think it's important to know that your relationship can work so differently to others, and you don't have to be the same. Like, relationships don't have to all run the same path. You know, they are different. And I think, yeah, it's important to discuss maybe with your partner where you see your sex life going, whether you do see at the age of that, do you think that's going to be us, or do you think we can prevent that from happening? Yeah,
that requires a lot of work though.
Absolutely.
That's what me and Eleanor have found, is that going through this has actually brought us closer together in that way, because, well, first of all, now there's no pressure.
Yeah.
If we have sex now, there's no like, we have to do this, it has to be done at this time on this day. That feels like a holiday. It honestly, it just feels like, I don't know how to describe it, but like when I was going through all this shit, I used to go and do ice baths outside, and you know, there's 70 quid ones you get, right? You know, in your garden, the little Lumi ones. And I'd do that in the morning because it was the hardest thing I'm going to do that day, and everything else seemed easy. So once I'd done 3 minutes or 5 minutes in this ice bath and I'd smashed the ice through, this is in winter, I knew when I got out there that the rest of the day, it doesn't matter what happened, everything's going to be a piece of piss compared to that, right? And I feel like with our sex journey through fertility, we went through the roughest part of that. So nothing can be harder than that now. And that feels like that's made us closer together in an intimate way, but we've had to go through the shit to get to that. But that if you think about it, that's required a lot of work, and that could have gone a different way. And I know a lot of couples who don't make it through those periods. So what I was trying to come out full circle there is that required work for us to work through that 4 or 5 years to really get through it on our sex life. But now we're in a really good place. But I think now when you're going into those later years, that also requires work.
Yeah. But it's important to understand that relationships are work.
Yes.
Marriage is work.
Completely.
You know, a lot of people, some people are extremely lucky. I mean, my parents, for one, I mean, they say they've never argued. I just think that's crazy, you know. But it's, you know, and some people do have a really nice path. But a lot of the time, I mean, it's till death do us part, or like, or what else
you get married,
say in it? Yeah, when you get married.
Sickness and in health.
Sickness and in health, that's what I'm going for. In sickness and in health, and you do go through tough thing, and you need to get out of it, and it is important, you know, you can argue, you can, you know, and I'm trying to tell myself that, because I'm there like, no argument, I'm breaking up with you. So, you know, it is, you know, but it's important that you're willing to work for it, to make it work, you know, because it's not as simple as, you know, it needs work to keep the fire alive.
100%. But as life, you say, life just, you know, it's so fast paced now, especially where we are down here in London. Like, if you live in London and you've got a relationship with someone and you get into your, you know, 30s or 40s, and you're working in the London, like in the city, life's crazy fast paced, and the scheduling thing now, it would have seemed crazy to me before, but now, obviously, having been through what we've been through, I wouldn't want to do that personally. But I can see how some people would prefer to do that.
And you're
prioritising it almost as well. You're making it a priority. That time in the week, or those 2 days or whatever, that's our time. That's time for us to work on.
And it means you can, you know, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to have sex right then and there. It means you go on a date, you have time that's just the two of you, because it is important. I know me and my partner, we live together, but we hardly see each other, you know, because we're so busy with work. So you actually do need to schedule that time in. Otherwise your relationship might fail, because also you're constantly changing in your life, that you could end up as two completely different people.
Completely.
And you're like, oh, hang a second, how do we make this work now? Yeah. You know, you've got to be having these conversations and openly communicating. I know I saw someone do an exercise. Oh, this was actually on Married at First Sight. I'm obsessed. But they do with the couples. One of the experts said, "Why don't you write?" They gave you a list of words, and then you had to write your values in order of 1 to 10, and what was your most important in your life.
Okay.
And I thought that was a really good thing that I'd suggest to do with a partner, is to write. To get words that you've discussed together, so like sex, money, children, going out clubbing, I don't know, you know, and then from 1 to 10 write them.
Or in priority.
In priority.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and so do it separately and then come together and then see if you guys align.
God, that could be a disaster.
Which could be a disaster, but it's important.
Yeah.
But this could be like from the get-go.
I see what you mean.
You know, but I think that's really important, because and also it's important to continue do a check-in once a week, because your values can change depending what's happening in your life at that time. And especially like for me at my age, you know, being early 20s, I'm at the minute thinking about my career, you know, and then that means your relationship is on the back foot, you know, for a while, which is totally like fine. I mean, that should, you know, that does happen, you know, but it's about being able to bring those things along, you know, bring the relationship along with you.
I love that idea.
You know, I think
of basically just making sure you guys are aligned. And if you're not aligned, I was saying it could be a disaster. That was just a reflex, but it could be really powerful to sit down and go, right, why is that your priority? And like try to understand each other better.
Yeah.
This actually segues nicely onto the last question I've got, which was, I wanted to talk about or ask you, in those moments where, like for example, like mine and Eleanor's journey, where we were really struggling to be intimate in those times, there's a lot of pressure. Mm-hmm. What can couples do who are struggling in that area to kind of really bring those barriers down, lower that stress in those moments where they do need to try, like there's no way around it? Is there anything that couples can do to kind of work through those periods? I mean, that you said before about going on a date, and like little things like that. Is there anything else that we can maybe, you know, tell people that might be able to help them bring them closer together when there's a lot of pressure?
Yeah, I think what I've done recently, and I've tested it, was obviously not trying to have a baby. You know, that's completely different.
Of course.
But to help any situation of becoming intimate, you know, whether you are going to have a baby or not, is I've found that getting cards that are like relationship cards online. You can get them on any website. I reckon. There's one that's the ones that I have used are Guilty Pleasures, and they're cards that just ask you deep personal questions, intimate questions. What would you like it if I did X, Y, and Z? You know, and it's being able to, and it's just a card game.
Yeah.
But it's being able to take those conversations into a game and being playful with it and having fun, because there's just too much pressure to do it right then and there, and you need to be open-minded, you know. And a lot of people laugh when you talk about sex, or when you talk, oh, let's get cards involved, you know, oh, ha ha ha. But it shouldn't be like that. You know, this is meant to be a fun thing that you do with your partner. I do it with mine. You know, we sit there and ask each other the card questions, and it's, you know, they go from 0 to 100 of, you know, how deep they are and how friendly, whatever they are. And I think that's another really good way is having other items in your house, you know, and other games to play that make it a lot less stressful. You know, so it's not all on, it's not all on just getting it done.
Yeah, which,
you know.
This is kind of what I'm getting at, because that is all it becomes at some point. and we didn't really have any, I don't even think we really tried many things because we were so stressed out.
Yeah.
That we didn't really have the bandwidth to think outside the box. This is why I wanted to ask you, this is your area. So if there's anything that can help people kind of lower that stress level and kind of bring down those barriers when things are really tense, I think it's worth.
Yeah, and I think it's just being spontaneous, you know, and doing random I think it's important that you know that also foreplay doesn't start in the bedroom. That starts from the minute your partner's walked in and they've done the washing up and you've done the washing up. You know, that for me would be the dream. You know, getting someone to do the laundry. You know, that is foreplay to me. You know, every little bit is making me more attracted to you and feeling more comfortable in your presence. You know, and I love spontaneity. You know, if you're like, right, I'm taking you here, we're going away for a weekend, you know, if you obviously financially that might not be viable, but just let's go for a picnic in the park.
Yeah, it could be something like low barrier to entry. Yeah, of
or
course.
literally like cleaning the house together. Yeah. You know, doing something that takes your mind away from it is like being open-minded within your relationship of what you could do to make it stronger, to build it. And yeah, I mean, I seek help, go and, you know, speak to someone about it, you know, find those people that you can properly have a conversation with. You know, I feel like everyone has friends they do certain things with or have certain conversations with. You know, there's that friend that I speak to that about, but I wouldn't tell that friend.
Yeah, no, completely. Know. Yeah.
But find your people that you know, and especially like going on double dates with couples. I think that's a very big thing. You know, I know I have friends that haven't ever been on a double date, but with their partner, and I think by then you're missing something as well, because it's important to see how other relationships are. Although it can freak you out, I think it's very important to see, that's what I don't like.
Yeah.
You know, or that's what I need to do. You know, and you can then have a joke and a laugh about certain things that irritate you, and you can, you know, have a laugh about it rather than let that like get in your head.
Completely.
Then all are you thinking about?
Oh, once it's in your head, right? It's game over. Yeah. Like even I used to say to Eleanor, I'd wake up in the morning and I'd just have to tell her. Yeah. And so in fact, sometimes when I'd tell her that I've got it in my head that like I've got pressure, that would actually help me.
Absolutely.
Because I've actually spoke to her. I've not held it in.
Yeah.
She knows. She's been like, all right, don't worry about it. And as soon as she said, don't worry about it, I'm like, all right, I'm ready now.
Yeah.
Because like I haven't held that pressure in, like suppressed it. So, I mean, I'll add one to this. Now I'm thinking about it. I'm asking you for all the tips, but really for us, I think speaking about it, because
absolutely,
when I bottled it up for so long and kept it inside, that made everything tenfold worse. And when I opened up to Eleanor, it actually allowed me to relax.
Yeah.
I didn't want to speak to Eleanor about it, but it definitely helps.
Yeah.
And that stress can definitely be lowered. But I think all those other things you mentioned are great. I like the cards idea as well. Yeah, mate, thank you so much for coming down. I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope I was just as insightful as your other guest.
It was perfect. And I really appreciate you coming down and being very honest. And I appreciate what you do, which is talking openly about something that people talk little about publicly, right? And I feel like that's why I think we're aligned in a lot of ways. What we're doing with No Straight Lines and Illuma is trying to illuminate a topic which people don't talk about. And you're doing it with sex as well, because you didn't understand something. You had humility to say that, and you're just now leaning into that.
Yeah.
So I love what you're doing. Me and Eleanor both love what you're doing. She's really sorry she couldn't be here today, but I'm sure we'll see each other soon. But yeah, thanks for coming down, mate.
You're
really
welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Before we go, where can everyone find you?
Yes, the podcast is Dirty Talk. You can find it on all platforms, at Tatiana Ashbourne _ on TikTok, and then at Dirty Talk Official _ on Instagram.
I'll put them all in the description.
Put it all in the description. Yeah.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.